Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on sales management, and more specifically on a very common phenomenon within the topic of sales management, and specifically within the recruitment of sales managers, which is the promotion of your best salespeople to managers. And it's a topic that lies very close to our hearts here at Quadrant Consulting, because we see over and over again that top performing salespeople are promoted to sales managers, and all of a sudden, well, they're no longer top performers, which is kind of heartbreaking in a way. So today we'll cover why they are at risk of failure, and how to avoid it. And originally, the welcome section looked like this. My colleague Martin had been looking forward to host this session. Unfortunately, it turns out that skiing is dangerous. And Martin had a surgery in his leg on a Sunday afternoon. He's all good now, but unfortunately he just can't stand upright. So I have the pleasure of covering this topic, and hope you'll find it interesting nonetheless. So today we'll cover 4 overall things. We'll cover what made you a great musician won't make you a great orchestra conductor, and what that has to do with sales. We'll cover the characteristics of successful sales managers. We'll talk a little bit about enabling the successful salesperson to manage a transition. And then we'll have a Q&A session. So by all means, ask questions in the comment section if you have any. So let's get to it. First part here is what made you a great musician won't make you a great orchestra conductor. And I'll get back to what we mean by that in a second. But before that, we'll start off in Toronto, 1932, where Glenn Gould is born. For those that haven't heard that name before, he was an extraordinarily gifted Canadian classical pianist who became very famous for his ability to play the piano. And the story goes that before he was 3 years old, he could actually already play the piano. And it was clear from a very, very early age that he was extraordinarily gifted. Apparently by age 5, the story goes, he could play better piano than most adults. And actually, at age 10, he got enrolled at the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto. So special kid. But he also tried doing something else than playing the piano on his own, and that was to play music with others and through others. By through others, I mean as an orchestra conductor. But he never really succeeded in doing so. And an anecdote in that regard goes that he believed that a warmer room temperature, so the warmer the room, the better he would play. Apparently it had to do with more flexible and responsive fingers when hitting the piano keys. So you always make sure that the room was very warm when playing. The thing was just that when he was playing with others, say singers, that wouldn't really be optimal for them, because warm and humid conditions apparently it's not very good for singers and voice. It has to do with the vocal cords. It's hard to control your vocal performance and so forth. So what do I mean? What is my point with that? Well, that is really just because he was great at pure playing music on his own, it was still really hard for him to play with or through others. So what to take away from that is that just what made you a great musician won't make you a great orchestra conductor. But before getting to what that has to do with sales, we'll go back a few years, even more, to New York in 1918. And here, Leonard Bernstein was born. Bernstein wasn't born into music the same way that Glenn Gould was. He wasn't sitting at a piano before he was 3 years old. He wasn't enrolled at the Royal Music Conservatory in Toronto by age 10. But he did learn to play a little bit during his life, just without the same natural talent and gift as Glenn Gould. But what he did have was a great interest and skill as a music conductor. So to play music through others and make others play together in a very beautiful harmony. And he's been very, very celebrated as one of the greatest music conductors for basically of all time. So as it turns out, while he was not the very best at playing music, he was still incredible in his ability to make the different types of musicians in an orchestra come together. So don't ask me how he did that. But what I do take away from that is that conductors are not necessarily powerful in their own ability to play music. They're powerful in their ability to make others play music. And by now, you might have already figured out what that has to do with sales. And that is that sales managers that used to be really, really good sellers on their own are not necessarily good at making others sell. So the question is, how might that be? Can't you just take a really, really high performing salesperson and promote them to sales manager, give them a team of 5, 6, 8 people, and get everybody else to do what they did? But the thing is that that's you can't really do that. And the reason is the same as the difference between being a musician versus being a conductor, and a seller versus a manager. And that is that when you're a musician versus conductor and salesperson versus manager, you're conducting two fundamentally different jobs. So what you go and do in front of in the concert hall, or what you do on Monday morning as a salesperson or sales manager, is just two different things. Your tasks are very different. Glenn Gould couldn't just teach everybody to play the piano in the same way that he did. In the same way, you can't just get everybody to do what the top performing salesperson did when he becomes a sales manager. So let's have a slightly closer look at how that might be. On the left here, we have some examples of what might be some of the responsibility areas, some of the tasks that a salesperson is doing. Could be relationship building with potential new customers, identifying new potential customers, stimulating interest with these, having some degree of product knowledge and ability to compellingly present it, conduct sales conversations, negotiate and close deals, all sorts of stuff like that. I think you follow my line of thinking here. A sales manager, on the other hand, his job and the day-to-day responsibilities are much more closely related to being a sales coach and mentor, to doing team leadership and management, monitoring performance, analyzing it, doing pipeline reviews, collaborating and coordinating with other departments, and so forth. So what is the point here? Well, that is that the salesperson is doing and the sales manager is helping others do. And those two things are two very, very different things. So the risk of succeeding as a sales manager, if you're promoted due to being a high performer, is unfortunately not just something we're making up out of blue air. It's actually very real. On the graph here, we see two scatter plots. The one on the left shows that the better you perform as a salesperson, well, the larger the probability of becoming promoted. That makes quite a lot of sense, honestly, doesn't it? Very logical. The better you are, well, the better the chance you have of promotion. All right, fair. What we see on the right scatter plot, though, is that the salespeople with higher performance pre-promotion are unfortunately much likely to have lower performing sales teams after. So there's actually a direct correlation between the higher the performance you had before you got promoted, the lower your new sales team is actually at risk of performing. Kind of astonishing in some way, and a little bit terrifying because somebody that used to be a high performer as a seller all of a sudden is not a high performer as a manager because now their team is not performing well. So what does characterize successful sales managers then? Well, overall, successful sales managers master 4 different roles. They ensure that their team has an accurate and healthy pipeline, so that the numbers that indicate sales targets can be trusted, and hopefully those numbers will indicate that the goals will be achieved. They are sales coach and mentor, So they support their team in winning more sales opportunities, growing their accounts. In general, they help them do their job better. They're people developers, so they help their teams develop professionally to advance their career, develop their competencies. In general, they are the managers of those salespeople to help them develop. Finally, they are change facilitators, which means that they essentially reinforce and support change initiatives coming from the organization, and empower sellers to navigate and handle new ways of doing things. So four different but very, very critical roles for sales manager to master. And then why is good sales leadership then so important? Well, that is because there's essentially two factors that are part of ensuring significant and lasting effect on a sales organization, and that is a mixture of having the right sales methodology and right sales tools that are fit for the type of customer conversations that you have, what you need to support during those conversations, and leadership, sales leadership, having a good sales manager. So the combination of those two in this good old 2x2 matrix is how you achieve a significant lasting effect on in your sales organization. So how do managers then actually approach employee development, coaching them, helping them develop? Well, it turns out that they typically do it in four different ways. Gartner did a very large study on this, which we've let us inspire by. The first type is the teacher manager. The teacher manager essentially takes what he used to do and tries to teach people then how to do it now. So based on his own expertise, his own experience, his or her, I better say, he provides feedback and directs employees towards to help them develop. Then we have the always-on manager, who's always there to provide continuous and very frequent coaching to drive his employees' development and in general help them as well. He's always there. He's always gonna help you with whatever you need. Then we have the connector manager, which is a slightly different type of manager. The connector manager is known by that he or she very much introduces employees to others that can help coach them and develop them on specific areas. So the connector manager is not so much about telling people what to do on him or his or her own, but more about connecting the salesperson with whoever the manager thinks will help that person get an answer or develop in a specific way. That might be like consist of saying to a salesperson that I think you should speak to Mr. John, sales engineer over in this and this department, because I know he did a use case on this with a customer a year back or so. So it's more about ensuring that the team members talk to the right people whenever they are in need of something. Fourth, we have the cheerleader manager. He or she takes a hands-on approach to leadership. Is always there to be super powerful, cheer people, give positive feedback and reinforcement, and enable employees to direct their own development. So, but the words of it, they all sound pretty good. Like it's all positive adjectives describing them. They all try to be the best possible manager by doing what they believe is right. But as it turns out, there's actually quite a difference in how the sales teams of these different types of managers actually perform. So the ones that perform by far the best is actually salespeople working under connector managers. And it's not just a few percentage points, it's actually as much as 26% average improvement in the performance of direct reports when you're a connector manager versus being one of the others. 26% increase in revenue just from being a very specific type of manager almost sounds a little odd, doesn't it? Well, the numbers don't lie, but let's try and dig a little deeper into what it actually is that connector managers do so well. Because they do primarily three things in particular. The first thing is that they do not approach development of different types of employees in the same way, but they personalize for whatever they learn works the best for that specific individual. So that makes quite a lot of sense. They tailor development to employee needs and interests, and basically coaches and guides based on that. Seems fairly logical, yet very, very critical. Number two, powers the team for peer-to-peer development. So they try to ensure that within the team, there's an ongoing development, not only happening through the manager helping people develop, but also by helping and enabling the team to help each other develop. So that is about setting up the right mechanisms within the team to not only learn from that manager, but also from each other. Finally, they teach their employees how to learn from new connections and help those team members expand their network so they can learn from people that are not just the sales manager, but from the people that are the very best at doing a very particular thing within the organization. Take the sales engineer, for example. Really good example of somebody that could help a salesperson understand a very specific use case that could apply to a very specific customer. So they know a lot of people throughout the organization, and they can help connect their team to these people to develop and essentially do better. So what we should take away from this is the manager role is much less about getting involved and telling people what to do, and more about fostering team cooperation and development. Sounds a little bit soft in some way when you read it out loud, but the fact is just that you can't just tell people to do something and they do it. It's much more about ensuring they learn from all the different types of people they have around them, and in that way develop. So there's an old and a right way of going about team collaboration. The old approach is the good old one, where team development happens through one-to-one communication between the manager, the white circle here, and the salespeople in the yellow circles. Essentially, the sales manager telling his employees, see, this is what I used to do. I think you should try and do the same with this specific customer. That is sort of the old way. Instead, what we call the right way is to ensure that the right people from the right functions talk to each other. And in that way, the sales manager is much less about telling specific people what to do. He's much more about orchestrating team collaboration in some way. So ensuring that the right people get in the room together and learn from each other. And in that way, develop, become better, get better at sales conversations, and in the end, sell more. That sort of draws us back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is, this is much like how music conductors orchestrate the musicians in the orchestra to play together. And this is exactly why sales professionals being promoted from salespeople to sales managers shouldn't continue to try to be the best musicians, the Glenn Goulds of the world. Instead, they should try and turn into music conductors and learn how to get people to play together. Now, I'm not a big conductor myself, as you can see here, but that's very much the transition that they should take. And that very much leads us to the next section here, which is focused on exactly this topic, on enabling the salesperson to manage a transition successfully. Certainly not an easy feat. So first of all, I think an important point for me to make here is that we're not saying that you should completely stop promoting salespeople to sales managers. What we're just saying is that I think you should be extremely attentive to that shift in responsibilities, the job the tasks that you show up to Monday morning and do, and in essence just recognize that it's two different jobs that require different competencies, different capabilities. So you need to be good at different things, and that's just not a transition that happens overnight and you become good at overnight. So we believe that there are 5 critical steps to helping aspiring sales managers succeed. The first is to make high performers aware of what we call unconscious competence. You should make the journey gradual. You should have a firm sales management operating model for them to live into. I'll get back to what we mean by that sales management operating model. You should teach them the key skills required to succeed in their new role. And you should involve sales leadership in sales manager development. So let's take the first point here. Make high performers aware of their unconscious incompetence. And I actually, it sounds kind of harsh, this way of saying it, unconscious incompetence. But what it means is essentially that you don't know, if you don't know that you have something to learn or what you have to learn, well, then you'll never get to learn it. So the first and in my opinion most critical step is going from step 1 here to step 2, going from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. Because at step 2, you at least know that you have to develop in some way to succeed, even though you might not have done so yet. But you're aware of it, you're addressing it, and you're trying to transition from being consciously incompetent to consciously competent, that where you've learned the new skills, but you of course still try to apply it consciously before finally arriving at a step that requires several years of experience, which is just doing. You just do without thinking. So the big problem with salespeople being promoted is that they come from a history of being the best for years. They've been top performers. Now they finally get the promotion. They just need to get everybody to do what they used to do. Well, not quite. They should actually develop and do something completely else. So takeaway here: avoid falling in the trap of not recognizing that you have to develop. First critical step. Step number 2: make the journey gradual. So there's several steps to get in place after promotion, and they might not come in this specific order that we put it here, but by the small yellow box here at the bottom, we see basically what is already in place, and that is successful salespeople that get promoted somehow crack the code for how to be top performing salespeople. So they have the technical skills that enables them to act as an advisor. But what they need to develop in some way upon promotion is a lot of different things. They need to become a very good coach. They need to empower the team, not micromanage. They need to be people managers all of a sudden, so they need to express interest, concern, empathy for people's success and well-being, which can be quite different from being a lone wolf seller. They're productive and they're result-oriented. They're good at communicating. They're good at helping people with career development, and they have a clear vision and strategy for the team and have the team on board for that development. So takeaway here, well, that is in line with what we've already discussed today, and that is there's the fundament in place for becoming a good sales manager, which is that you were a good salesperson, but there's still a lot to develop upon a promotion, and that journey should be gradual. You're not going to succeed with this overnight, but take it step by step. A very good way to ensure that that there's the right structure is in place for facilitating this manager to salespeople person communication interactions is a sales management operating model. And for clarity, what we mean by a sales operating model is that you have the right interactions between the manager and the team. with the right structure and ongoing to some sort of set frequency. Unfortunately, what we experienced is that a lot of sales managers are in organizations where there is no formal or clearly defined sales management operating model in place. And what that causes is a risk of like structure around coaching and development conversations. And ultimately, what that means is that the sales manager who's just promoted and is actually not very good at his or her job in the first place from the get-go, have to invent all of this from the bottom up. They have to do a skills coaching with the sellers. They have to have a certain methodology around coaching. They have to invent a certain process around interactions. They have to make the tools and get the tools and technology in place to do so. They need to put in a calendar with the right frequency and so forth. And they need to do that across the different types of interactions that you, as a sales manager, should on an ongoing basis have with your team. Super important to have a firm sales management operating model for them to live into. If not, frankly, as a sales leadership, you're not setting your sales managers, neither their teams up for success. Point number 4, teach them the key skills required to succeed in a new role. So we've seen throughout the webinar that sales managers need to master several different roles. They need to be good at a lot of different things. But funny enough, well, tragically enough, I almost want to say sales managers are the ones that are least likely to receive training throughout the organization. So a lot of organizations invest fairly well in sales training, developing their salespeople. The sales leadership, so the sales directors, they'll have some sort of consultants, executive advisors to speak to, somebody to lean up against. But sales managers, they sort of fall in the middle there. And that's actually quite a shame, because sales managers, the way we see it here at Quadrant, is the biggest lever to sort of multiplying growth, learning, development throughout the organization. So we've already seen earlier with the connector managers that they are able to, if they do their job as connector managers well, they can actually influence revenue, sales team performance as much as up to 26%. So they're the multiplier for the salespeople to become better. So instead of trying to train 10 salespeople at a time, you should probably do that as well. If you train just 1 or 2 of your sales managers, well, they can help all of those become better, and they can reinforce learning and development over time. So very big pet peeve of mine personally, and also Martin was supposed to host this webinar today, that they are under-trained and they should be trained more to enable better performance of the sales team. Fifth and final point here is to involve sales leadership in sales manager development. And to do so, we actually recommend that there's also between the sales director and sales manager that there are some sort of ongoing interactions to a set frequency to drive development and performance improvement among sales managers as well. So it's not only the salespeople need to develop and perform better, sales managers of course need to do as well. Their leader is frequently the sales director, and he or she needs to support and reinforce the development of the sales manager, especially upon promotion from a salesperson to a manager, help the manager perform. It's just super critical for the entire sales organization to perform well. So sales leadership should be involved in sales manager development. Almost goes without saying, not always the case out there. So very important focus point. Thus, for sales leadership, it should be less about how their newly promoted sales managers perform when they were salespeople. And it should be much more about how they as leaders set up new managers to succeed before starting a new role, and how they enable to succeed once they've assumed the new role. So I think I'll let that point stand and rest there for a little bit. And then we'll move on to the final part here, which is the Q&A. So let's move up onto the questions that have popped up in the chat here. So I see one here, which is basically on how do I ensure that my new sales managers know that they're unconsciously incompetent? Very good question. First of all, certainly agree that it can be hard to have somebody that has been the superstar of your sales team for the past 3 years actually go from being to get them to recognize that they are no longer a top performer. Good first step will potentially show them this webinar. If not, I definitely recommend trying a good exercise is trying to get them to write up the day-to-day tasks that they were performing before and how good they were, perhaps rate themselves on that, and then get themselves to write up the key tasks that they now need to perform as sales managers, and perhaps even get them to rate themselves on that and do specific sort of development plans for that. Yeah, Camilla, I know you mentioned there was a question more, but I do not see it. Anyways, I think I'll say thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Hope you enjoyed this webinar, and yeah, have a great day, everyone.